The events of the series begin with Sophie preparing for her first day of work as a manager at a publishing house. Upon her arrival, Sophie meets the CEO, Ronnie, and organizes a meeting with the staff to welcome them. However, the temporary technical employee named Max arrives late for the meeting, disrupting the entire office due to his tardiness. Sophie heads to her office, hears an annoying noise coming from the wall, and discovers it's Max causing the disturbance. She asks him to work outside business hours so that the staff can work peacefully. Later, she holds another meeting with Friedrich, the literary director, and Denise, the public relations manager. Sophie returns home and talks to her husband, Johann, about her first day at the publishing house, explaining that the company needs effort and time to modernize as they are still using manual systems instead of electronic ones. At bedtime, Sophie goes to the bathroom and watches an exciting movie to relieve her stress. The next day at work, Sophie is in her office, as usual, when she hears another noise caused by Max. She argues with him and again tells him to work outside the employees' working hours because the noise prevents them from concentrating. Sophie stays late at the publishing house after the staff has left and decides to watch erotic movies because she feels anxious. Max appears to have seen her watching these movies and takes photos of her without her noticing. The next day, Max waits for Sophie outside her office and tells her he knows what she does alone and has documented everything. Max mocks Sophie's actions as she tries to find information about him. She discovers he is a poor young man and decides to use his poverty to her advantage by offering him money in exchange for deleting the photos from his phone. Max takes advantage of the situation and asks her to invite him to lunch with her. Sophie fulfills Max's request and agrees to have lunch with him. During lunch, Max asks Sophie why she watches erotic movies, but Sophie's friend interrupts them. Max assures Sophie that he has deleted the photos from his phone, but she remains suspicious. She takes his phone with her and, back at work, feels euphoric at having bested Max. Denise and Friedrich argue about inappropriate conversations on their personal accounts, believing someone has hacked them. They turn to Max, the technical employee, to resolve the issue. However, Max needs his phone, which Sophie still has. Sophie realizes that Max planned the entire situation to get his phone back. She is impressed by Max's cleverness as he successfully retrieves his phone. Sophie then goes to the bathroom, applies lipstick and emerges, handing the lipstick to Max. She tells him that the color of the lipstick represents her the most and asks how she can retrieve it from him. Max doesn't understand Sophie's actions, but keeps the lipstick. The next day, Max sends Sophie an envelope through the secretary, instructing her to yell at someone other than him. He explains that the game stipulates that whoever has the lipstick can make a demand of the other person, who must fulfill it without objection. Sophie starts looking for an employee to yell at, as Max instructed, but finds only the secretary, who leaves the office without permission. However, the secretary reminds Sophie that she had asked to leave early, unaware that this is part of a game between Max and Sophie. Sophie returns to her office and watches Max joyfully. The following morning, Sophie leaves the publishing house angrily but collides with a cyclist. They argue, but Max steps in after hearing Sophie's voice. He organizes the scattered papers and returns the lipstick to her, indicating it's now her turn to make a demand of him. That night, Sophie and her husband Johann attend a party, but she feels uncomfortable, especially as Johann belittles her in front of his friends. Sophie turns to Max to relieve her stress, initiating her game with him. She messages him, asking him to deliberately create chaos and noise during the next day's meeting at the publishing house. The following day, the employees are surprised when cleaning staff arrive before the meeting ends because Max lied to them, saying Sophie had invited them for coffee as a token of appreciation. Thus, Max fulfills Sophie's request. Max meets Sophie in her office and takes her lipstick as a signal that it's now his turn to make a demand. That evening, Max messages Sophie, asking her to come to work early dressed like a 90s pop singer. Sophie complies, surprising all the staff with her eccentric outfit. Except for Max, Sophie thanks Max for succeeding in his task and returns the lipstick, but Max kisses her on the street out of joy for his success. The next day, Sophie visits her daughter Isabella's school and meets the teacher, who says Isabella excels academically, but is introverted and has interests different from her peers. The teacher asks Sophie to address the issue with her daughter. In the days leading up to the book fair, Sophie notices that her room is across from Max's. It's now her turn to make a demand, as she still has the lipstick. She leaves a note on Max's door, asking him to do something that will draw everyone's attention at the book fair. Max turns off all the lights at the event and escapes, fulfilling Sophie's request. He later reappears at the fair, where Sophie congratulates him. She goes to her room and waits for Max, but she hears a noise coming from his room. Looking through she sees him standing nervously outside her door. The next day at the press conference, Sophie and Max have lunch with the publishing house staff. Sophie notices Max talking to the secretary and becomes jealous. She whispers in his ear, asking him to make the lunch more exciting, but Max is unsure how to act. He notices the kitchen is empty and decides to lace the desserts with a drug. Max warns Sophie not to eat the candy before carrying out his plan. Everyone eats the desserts greedily. During the press conference, Friedrich and Denise argue, and the entire staff becomes unconscious from the drug, except for Sophie and Max. The next day, Sophie asks Max to go to the pool with her. They enjoy their time together, return to the hotel, and make love for the first time. After the book fair, the staff returns to the publishing house. However, Max doesn't see Sophie and learns she's been working from home for 3 weeks. Feeling distraught, he tries contacting her, but she doesn't respond. Max visits Sophie at her home and confronts her about ignoring him. Sophie admits their relationship was wrong but feels weak in his presence and starts a new relationship with him. Suddenly, Johann arrives home and notices Max's presence. Sophie lies, saying Max came to fix the dishwasher. Max pretends to repair it but gets angry and leaves, deciding not to speak to Sophie again. The next day, Sophie goes to the publishing house, apologizes to Max, and he forgives her. He invites her to his shared home, where they spend the day together. Max reveals that his mother doesn't like him because she sees him as a playboy. The following morning, Sophie returns to work. The secretary notices her growing closeness to Max and warns him that she could report Sophie for abusing her position to get close to younger men. Max ignores her comments and waits for an opportunity to talk to Sophie. She offers him the lipstick in exchange for visiting his mother and spending her birthday with her. Max agrees. Back home, Sophie prepares cookies for her daughter, Isabella, but Johann mocks her, as usual. Sophie retreats to the bathroom and cries alone while Max visits his mother and younger brother. His brother asks if he's engaged and Max claims he's in a relationship with a beautiful woman, showing him Sophie's picture. Max's mother is shocked to see her son involved with an older, married woman with a child. Meanwhile, Johann surprises Sophie by announcing he wants to move to London and asks her to leave her job. Sophie becomes angry, as he didn't consult her opinion. At the publishing house, Sophie informs Ronnie that she plans to move to London with her husband and daughter. Max overhears this, becomes confused, and confronts Sophie in front of staff. They step outside to talk, and Sophie angrily tells Max that their relationship is madness, not love. She confesses she regrets meeting him, then throws the lipstick away. Sophie assures Max that nothing is left between them. Max is devastated and returns to work, but suddenly collapses. He wakes up and breaks down in tears. Sophie is also heartbroken and hopes for a miracle to reunite with Max. The next day, Johann suggests they go out with friends to ease the tension between them. As usual, Johann belittles Sophie in front of his friends, claiming her father is insane. This time, Sophie stands up to him, replying sharply in front of everyone. She storms into the publishing house, dressed in a bathrobe, and interrupts a meeting where a woman tears up her contract due to Sophie's actions. Sophie leaves the meeting, and Max follows her. Happiness floods Max's heart as he realizes Sophie didn't move to London because she has fallen in love with him. She defied her husband, Johann, and societal norms, rejecting traditions that oppose a relationship between an older woman and a young man still trying to find his way in life.